Hey guys, Ike here from Mike'sOutdoors.com. I'm here today to show you 5 things that you're doing wrong when you're shooting your compound bow. Okay, so I should say that these are 5 things that you might be doing wrong. Of course, that's just a clickbait title. So, these are 5 things that you might be doing wrong when you're shooting your compound bow. And I know these for 2 reasons. One, working in the shop, long time, getting to see a lot of people shooting the bow. And 2, the other reason I know all these is because these are the ones I've done. And this is why these are my 5. And the 5 that I'm recommending or presenting to you is because these are the 5 that I have dealt with, and these are the 5 that I know how to get over. So we're going to go through these 5 and kind of come up with a solution to these 5 problems as we go. So number 1 is an inconsistent anchoring point. I'm going to draw back this gearhead bow here and just show you what I mean by an inconsistent anchoring point and how it can affect your bow. So your anchoring point is where you rest your hand when you draw back this bow. Where you rest your hand, where everything lines up on your bow is what your anchoring point is. And inconsistent anchoring point can really change the trajectory of your arrow. You can see there, my anchoring point comes right back, and I put my knuckle behind my ear. I put the arrow right on my jaw, and I settle my nose right down onto the string. And when I do that, I've got 3 consistent points of contact with the bow. If I were to change this anchoring point down, you see what that does to the arrow. It lowers that arrow, which is going to raise the point, lowers the tail end and raises the point on that arrow. And what that's going to do is it's going to drastically change the trajectory of your arrow. So if you're back here and you lower this hand, it's going to raise the point and it's going to make that arrow shoot higher. If you raise this hand, it's going to lower the point and it's going to make that arrow shoot lower. So that can really affect the consistency of your arrows up and down. The other thing that I see a lot of people doing is not having an anchoring point at all. They're coming out and they're not actually touching their face anywhere. My son does this a lot. It's something that I've struggled with trying to get him to do. He's afraid to put that string to his face because he's afraid he's going to hurt, it's going to leave a mark on his cheek, it's going to catch his nose, something like that. So if your anchoring point is floating out here, you have no way of getting consistent left and right. So that will really affect your left and right position on your, or impact on your target. So the way that you're going to overcome this is muscle memory and just constantly shooting. When I'm just playing around and just talking hunting, when I'm telling stories about, oh yeah, this deer came in and I came to full draw, my hand immediately goes to that position. That I've been shooting for 30 years, and it immediately goes to that position, lines that finger up right with my jawbone. And that's what it takes to get a consistent anchoring spot is something that something that is consistent, something that feels the same each time. That arrow coming in underneath my chin is another thing that I know when that arrow slides in, that arrow is right here on my jawline. My knuckle is right here on my jawline. Some people do their nose, some people do the corner of their mouth, some people put kisser buttons on their bow, some people do nose buttons on there. There's several of those out there. Some people, my dad used to tie instead of a nose button, he would tie a big thick area of serving on his bowstring, and he would pull that and that would touch his nose. So there's several different things you can do to improve the consistency of your anchoring point. And it's very important to do that and get your anchoring point to be as consistent as possible. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is punching the trigger. And you'll notice here I'm using a different release than what I normally use. I normally use a back tension release. And this is one that I'm not going to be able to really help you get over, but I'll show you what it is and talk to you about how I got over it. Punching the trigger is exactly what it sounds like. You come to full draw, and instead of putting your finger on the trigger and making a slow, gentle squeeze, you will just put your finger on the trigger and pull. You'll notice when I do it that what I'm talking about. Another thing that I've seen people do, because I did it, is go from this position right here to their finger floating to just slapping it. And when they do that, that's another one. You need to come to a full draw. You need to get into position and you need to slowly squeeze that trigger off. If this hand is not moving back in some way when you make that shot, then you're not properly activating your trigger. So that was the proper technique. Let me show you what I mean by punching the trigger. And we're going to do it like I used to do, where we're going to float above it and just slap at it. So you come to full draw, you get your sight on the target, and you get your finger above the trigger and you just slap. And when you do that, it will progressively get worse and worse and worse and worse. And for me, I got to where I was coming completely from behind the trigger and going all the way around like that, and you'll see some of my old ATA videos. It just was terrible. And when you do that, you shoot all over the place. I mean, you just consistently will never get any kind of consistency out of it. You'll just absolutely shoot everywhere. And the training for that, to get rid of that, is upping the trigger pull on your release, switching to a different release, going to a thumb release. A lot of guys do something called blind bail, where you actually will step up to a target that you know is safe to shoot at, and you'll pull your bow back and you'll shoot with your eyes closed and focus on nothing but your form and squeezing that trigger. I tried all that stuff and none of it worked. And the reason, what I ended up doing was going to a back tension release, and the back tension release ended up curing my punching the trigger and ended up curing my target panic as well. So let's move on to the next thing. The next thing is gripping the bow at the shot. This is really bad to do, and a lot of guys do it because they're afraid to drop the bow. That's what your wristling on your bow is for. And you notice I don't have a wristling on my bow. It's because I grip my bow when I shoot it. So you're supposed to shoot your bow with an open hand. You should shoot your bow just like this, with your fingers just completely splayed open like that. I shoot with these two fingers down and my pinky up like I'm some kind of sophisticated gentleman instead of a redneck drinking some fancy drink. But what you should be doing is keeping that hand open the whole time. And one of the biggest issues is guys gripping at the shot. They'll have their hand open and they'll grip at the shot. And when you do that, if you're a right-handed shooter, it'll push that bow to the right, and you'll consistently be shooting to the right. And that can really throw your consistency off. So you'll see my bow hand here on this gearhead. Yeah, you should be able to see it. What I do is I start out with my bow hand open, and I have these two fingers right here, my front two fingers, my index finger and my middle finger, just lightly pressed into the bow. And when I shoot, the bow cradles into those fingers. So it looks like I'm gripping the bow, and I'm not actually gripping the bow. I'm just closing my hand enough that when that bow goes forward, it settles into my fingers. So that is one way you can get over that, gripping the bow. And that's really it. It's another one of those things, go back to blind bail shooting. You can do like I do, where you just loosely grip it and let the bow fall into the cradle that your hand forms. The other thing you can do is blind bail shooting. Blind bail shooting is a kind of a fix-all for forms. So that is a big issue when it comes to inconsistency and not shooting good groups, or not shooting and not hitting the target at all sometimes. The next thing is not tuning. Not tuning your bow in the worst case scenarios will really make your arrows fly differently. If you get contact with your bow, with your arrows, it's really going to throw them all over the place and really produce inconsistent results. So learning how to tune a bow and get it to where it's putting a broadhead or a bare shaft tune or a bare shaft arrow in a consistent spot, in the same spot as your field points, is very, very important. Your field points, your broadheads, and a shaft with no vanes on it should all be hitting in the exact same spot if a bow is properly tuned. And a bow that is improperly tuned can really cause you some major consistency issues, and it could cause you to lack efficiency in your bow. So you'll lose feet per second with that. You'll lose energy on the shot. You'll just lose all kinds of things by not having a properly tuned bow. And we got 100 tuning videos out there, so you can go and check all those out and learn how to tune a bow. What I like to do is, I don't even paper tune anymore. What I like to do is walk back tune my rest, and then I just broadhead tune my bows. Those are the two things that I do. And that seems to get me to where I'm doing I think my bow is shooting at its peak performance, and I think I'm getting my arrows flying out as straight as I possibly can get them. The next thing I see, and I see this all the time, is guys that have an improperly fit bow. Draw length is a big thing, and draw length is what's important, or what is comfortable for you. I should be shooting a 28-inch draw length, but I like to shoot a 27.5-inch draw length. Some guys will go the other way and shoot a little bit longer, but you don't want to have your draw length to where your hand's out here or your butt back here. Shorter is probably better because you'll still shoot up, and if you can get a consistent anchoring point, you're probably okay. You don't want to be short by 2 inches, but if you're short by a ½ inch or something like that, like I am, you're probably okay. But if you get overdrawn, it gets you in a weird position. It gets this shoulder pushed back, and it gets this shoulder pushed out, and it can really affect the consistency and your comfort level and how well you can hold that bow. So hold that bow steady. So having the proper draw length is really, really important in getting consistent shots and consistent accuracy. The other thing that I see, and I see this so much, and I don't understand it, is these guys who shoot way too much poundage. They're shooting so much poundage that they can't draw the bow properly, and they can't get comfortable with the bow properly. There was a time when shooting 70 pounds meant that you could probably get up to 300 feet per second if you were shooting 70 pounds. Today, you can get 300 feet per second out of some bows shooting 50, 55 pounds. You know, these bows today are so efficient, and they're so fast that you do not need to shoot 60 or 70 pounds anymore. I don't know that you ever needed to shoot 70 pounds, even back in the day when bows weren't shooting that fast. I mean, I've seen guys shoot complete pass-throughs on deer with 45-pound recurves that are shooting maybe 200 feet per second. It's all about shot placement, and it's all about being accurate. And if you're overbowed and you're drawing too much weight, you're going to do a couple different things. You're not going to be able to hold that bow back steady. The other thing is you're going to, so when you get to full draw, you're not going to be able to hold it as long. You're going to be shaking. You're not going to get the kind of accuracy and the kind of solid platform that you need to be shooting from. The other thing is I see this a lot, but you'll see Mark Zuckerberg doing this in the video that he posted of him when he called himself Hawkeye. Google that and you'll appreciate it. You're welcome. You'll appreciate this, because what Zuckerberg does is he starts with the bow down here and he pulls it up like this, and then he draws, and it's just such a weird motion. He's pulling it like that. At least that's safe. At least the bow's not pointing at the sky, because the other thing that you see is a sky draw, and that's when guys are starting way up here and they're pulling down and they're bringing the bow down with them. And the shop that I worked at, it had hundreds, if not 1,000 marks in the ceiling where guys had done that. I absolutely, when guys came in, I had a sign hanging up, no sky draw. And if you sky draw, it is unsafe and it is dangerous. It's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt someone. If you pop off a carbon arrow, like when you got a bow like that, right above your head with a 7-foot ceiling or an 8-foot ceiling, you're going to be raining carbon down on people. The other thing is, if you do that at a 3D shoot, you're going to be raining arrows down on people. Lastly, if you do that while you're in the tree stand, if you have to do that while you're in the tree stand, how are you going to get that bow drawn back on a deer when it's right in front of you? A bow should fit you as far as draw length, and a bow should be with proper draw weight that you can draw that bow back in a nice, smooth, fluid motion without it ever leaving the target. I mean, that's 62, oh no, wait, this is a 65-pound bow. I got it maxed out. That's 65 pounds, and I can draw it just like that. I can draw it laying on my back. I can draw this standing on my head. And with this arrow, see, I slapped the trigger again. With this 450 grain arrow that I'm shooting, and the, I don't know, 265, 270 feet per second that I'm getting out of this bow with it set up like that, I'm putting out enough kinetic energy that I could go out and kill an elk with that setup. They're spraying for mosquitoes. The other thing is, with the kind of broadhead I'm shooting, you match your broadhead to your setup, and you don't need that. Like, if you want to shoot 55 pounds on a 450 grain arrow, you're probably not going to want to shoot an expandable broadhead. Shoot something like the Dirt Nap DRTs or the Dirt Nap Alpha. Can you tell what broadhead I'm shooting this year? shoot something like the Dirt Nap, a 2-blade cut-on contact fixed blade head, and you will get a lot more penetration out of that versus a 70-pound bow that's not shooting, you know, putting out the kind of kinetic energy that you need with an expandable head. So it's all about choices. It's all about the choice of gear that you make and getting everything fit to you. So I hope this helps you guys out. If you've had any of these problems, feel free to comment below and tell me how you overcame them, because there's some on this list that I have not overcame, like the punching the trigger, the gripping the bow. I still kind of do that from time to time. So I hope this helped you guys become a more consistent archer. Hopefully it helped you fill a few tags, and if it does, please be sure to comment below and tell me about your success out in the field. I'd love to see those pictures and hear those stories anyway, so be sure to do that. And you can do that on here, right on these YouTube videos, or you can do it on Instagram and Facebook, where we are under Ike's Outdoors. And please be sure to like, subscribe, and share these videos. And like always, we appreciate you guys watching these videos and spending time with us, and we will see you next time.